get a mid-year check-in around the budget. As you all know, the county's budget goes from January 1st to December 31st. That's your budget year, so we're right at the halfway point. It's a good chance to just check in and then be thinking. So it's really the first bite at the apple, you could say, in terms of thinking about the 2020 budget process, which is really going to start kicking into gear in September and October as the departments start proposing budgets for you all to consider as commissioners. We'll just get going. And let's see. So I'm going to start out with an existential question. Why do we budget? We budget for a number of reasons. It articulates what your priorities are. It's easy to say something's important. It's harder to say it's important and to put money towards it. A budget provides a roadmap of how your money is to be spent and what your priorities are, and it really tracks your reality over time. You say you want to spend $1,000 on this item, but you end up spending $3,000. That's good to be able to track that. So budgeting is a very important process. In the county, the budget is a set of funds. We have the general fund, the B Road Fund, the Municipal Building Authority Fund, the Health Fund, a lot of funds, Emergency Medical Services, which is ambulance service, and related services, Capital Projects Fund, which is a small one in this county, the Road Capital Projects Fund, which is a separate fund, the Landfill Fund, which is a unique one in that it's an enterprise fund, so it is a self-contained fund where money that the landfill makes is spent at the landfill. Nothing gets separated out there. The Tort Liability Fund, we'll talk about. The Tax Stability Trust Fund, so many funds, and the Library Fund. So that is your county government budget in a nutshell. Everybody correct? So we'll talk about these funds individually here for a little bit, and then this slideshow we'll put on the website. It'll be available. I'll send it to you all for reference to. It's just a good touchstone for moving forward in discussions. Where does general fund money come from? It comes from property taxes, sales taxes, and transient general sales taxes. You get money from licenses and permits, charges for services. Of course, if somebody gets a speeding ticket from the county, you can get some money from that. Grant money, like Natalie was talking about, we applied for as an organization. And then tilt money, payment in lieu of taxes. And also you get a little bit of money from the revitalization fund, the Utah Navajo Revitalization Fund, and then fund balance tends to contribute to your budget as well. Which is, the fund balance is the savings account that the county has in the general fund. What do you spend money on? A ton of things. General government in the county is your office. Planning and zoning, it's the justice court system, it's human resources, it's the clerk auditor's office, it's the treasurer's office, the recorder's office, the county attorney's office, the assessor, the surveyor, and you'll notice the last group of those were all independently elected officials, but their budgets are in the quote general fund budget unquote. So it's your job as the commission to set their budget, even though they are independently elected officials. So it's a funky relationship. Information technology is a part of that, as is economic development and visitor services. In public safety, is also part of the general fund. That includes the sheriff's department, fire and rescue, jail, all these things, including emergency services as well. There's some. The way funds are set up can be a little bit arbitrary. There's always some overlap and cross-pollination between funds, and we see that in how the county is staffed as well, because some people have 2 or 3 jobs, or they may have 1 job in the county, but their money for their salaries and benefits comes from different parts of the different funds within the county. Parks and Rec is a big piece of the budget. That includes the county queen pageant, just for the record, as well as the county fair. The community and economic development portion is a lot of the work that County Gallegos does, aging services and disability services. They receive a lot of money from the state in forms of grants, but that requires some county general fund money as well. There are 3 airports in the county, and the funds for those come from the general fund as well. And then there's a special projects section that includes various special events and special projects as well. It's sort of a catch-all section. And so, moving on to the B Road Fund, no surprise here. The B Road Fund is a big part of the county's budget. You get money from transportation sales tax, which is the one the voters passed in 2015 by popular vote to approve. B-road money comes from the state. That's gas tax money. So everywhere in the state where you buy gas, it gets put into a giant pool in the sky, and the state divvies it up based on how many road miles you have in your county and sends it back out. And then there's some charges for services that happen. For instance, if another part of the county needs a repair on their truck, the road fund folks will do it and then charge it back out. So that's fairly assessed. Expenses for B roads, everything that's really in the road cross-section of the roadway is considered an eligible expense. Some things are not eligible for B roads, namely trails. That's always been a big one. But a lot of things are eligible. However, the transportation sales tax money that comes in has a broader application. It's not as restricted as the B road funds are. Municipal building authority is really sort of an interesting construct, government construct that's used, and we use it in this county as a pass-through for mostly for major capital projects. So, the health building, which is in this current budget to be built. The road maintenance building is upcoming, hopefully. The EMS vehicles are what we've applied for CIB funding, and hopefully that will also get approved. And then there's an emergency operations center that's been approved through CIB for funding, but I'm not sure what the schedule is for that one to be built. So, but these are all projects that are worked through the MBA.
I think the engineers have a pretty good handle on that. I don't know if you've talked to them about it, but
I haven't. It's really been off my radar right now.
well,
But it's
they'll help drive that process.
And that's the thing. A lot of these, once the funding is in place, the contractor engineers and architects, they do their job and off it goes, which is nice. The health fund is a separate fund that receives property taxes and a lot of grant money from the state. And they spend their money doing the things that health departments do. A lot of education, a lot of immunization type work. It's an important function that is a fundamental, I'd say most people would argue, a fundamental government function. The Emergency Medical Services Fund, as we said, is mostly the ambulance service. They receive money from people who use the service. A lot of it comes through Medicare, I can't remember which. But the general fund also is subsidizing this. So regular taxpayer dollars are being used to help pay for the ambulance service because otherwise it wouldn't be able to exist, basically. And that EMS response does happen countywide, and agreements to be to support work down on the navigation, also in Spanish Valley. Primary coverage is from Grand County's EMS services, but San Juan County EMS ends up there a lot because they're overwhelmed along that list. Capital Projects Fund is kind of a non-fund right now. There's not a lot of money in there, but that comes just from the general fund. Roads Capital Fund is right now collecting interest, and road-related projects are what that gets spent on. As it's self-describing. Landfill, like I said, they collect fees when people come and dump stuff. They don't collect any taxes. They don't use any tax revenue. It's a self-sustaining fee. That's why it's called an enterprise fund. But there are some deferred capital and equipment needs that are upcoming that are going to be on your radar, probably to be thinking about. Landfills. It's an important part of making sure the community works. Tort liability fund is just a separate fund set aside to fund the liability insurance that's needed for the county. It gets a little bit of property tax revenue to do that. The tax stability fund is a really interesting one. This is a fund that has about $7 million in it that was built up over many years when times were extra flush. It's a state-created way of having some savings to be set aside for counties for when things are lean. The only way that money, though, you can always spend the interest on regular general fund type stuff, so public safety or government, whatever. But in order to spend down any of that $7 million itself, that has to go to a vote of the people. People got to vote on it, decide that that's what they want, that they're okay with that. And then there's the library fund, which is pretty straightforward. They collect property tax revenue and they fund your library system. However, it's worth noting that the fund balance in the library system, so their savings account as well, is definitely dwindling. They've been using their savings to help balance the budget too, which works for a few years, but doesn't work forever. So just as we think about the general fund and trends and things that are happening, basically in the general fund, which is the bulk of what the counties outside of the roads department use for government services, a lot of been using fund balance over the years to help balance out the general fund, which again, not a great practice. Over time, you do what you got to do. There's always that kind of practice, but at some point, it will that will be problematic, and we're maybe getting toward that point. General fund does help supplement other funds, namely the EMS and the health funds, and so that as those expenses have grown, the general fund's obligation or requirement to help those funds has increased. Part of this is about revenue, and if if revenue is not increasing to match what your expenses are, then you have a deficit. Pretty basic concept, right? And so over the years, the county's been really good about controlling tax rates and not increasing them. But there's consequences for that. And the consequence of that is that your revenue doesn't necessarily increase at the same level as inflation in these. It's just something to keep in mind. I know that the T word is, especially the PT word, is always painful. And then a reduction in interest rate over many years has certainly contributed to less revenue coming in. Back before the recession, interest rates were significantly higher, and the money that was sitting in the county savings account, it earned interest. Just sat there, earned interest, paid off that interest, spend the interest. Great. But when interest rates go to basically zero, as they did, then you don't get that money. So that's nothing the county can control. That's out of our hands, obviously. And then the last one that's worth flagging is that there have been multiple years of one-time expenditures related to litigation efforts and legal defense. And these have impacted the fund balance as well. I've got a couple of charts here. So this is a chart showing the fund balance from 2014 on the far left to 2018. And the top number is 10 million, and the line above zero is 2.5 million. So as you can see, the general fund balance is not headed in an awesome direction. And then this shows the legal defense expenditures, again from 2014 to 2018. The bottom number is 250,000, the top number is 1.25 million. And so that's gone up, it's dipped slightly at least for 2018, and I'm hoping that's the trend. So those are some important figures to keep in mind as you're thinking about budgeting here in 2019 and 2020. The bottom line, fund balance is headed into the upside down, not a good place to be. And going forward, you've got some things to think about. But really the goal needs to be, how do we make this general fund balance, how do we make it healthy again, how do we make it get back into a sustainable track? Really there's two basic ways. You control your expenses, or you increase your revenue. Usually governments do some sort of a mix of both. And so you have a lot of ways you can tweak how much you spend. But at the end of the day, the bulk of county spending is going to be on salaries and wages and compensation, because it's the people here in the county who are doing the work and getting paid to do the work. And so that can be a little bit limiting, because chances are you're not going to cut salaries. There's always ways to look at staffing and see if you have the right staffing in place, are there staffing efficiencies that can be found. But at the end of the day, that can be a bit of nibbling around the edges. On the revenue side, property taxes is something that the county controls, but there are other options for raising funds. One idea that's been floated recently is called an EMS fund or a dispatch fee, and that would help offset the expenses associated with both EMS and with what's happening in the Sheriff's Department with increasing expenses related to dispatch. That is actually, I think, a state mandate to have us staff in a certain way so that we have coverage in dispatch 24/7. And that's really going to result in significant increases, most likely, to the Sheriff's Office expenses related to staffing. And then the other thing worth flagging is, if there was a way to get stable so that at least we're breaking even in terms of what's coming in and what's going out, in order to get that fund balance back up to a healthier number, you could find some other one-time money and put it into the general fund. That's not a solution forever, but that is something that you could look at from other funds at some point to essentially give you a little bit more of a cushion in your general fund savings. So, just a few other items. Like I said, the landfill fund, flagging this, has some equipment needs and capital needs. The library fund, I know they've been talking about a small property tax increase because of the trend that they're looking at. Ultimately, I believe that is your decision, though, as a commission, whether they do that. Same with the health fund. And then the general fund, this is just on everybody's radar, so I put it on here. There's the potential, a decision has not been made yet, there's a potential that the courts will require the county to pay the attorney's fees related to the redistricting case, which could be up to $3.1 million. And so if that happens, you've got to figure out where that money comes from eventually. So those are just items to put on your radar. I know that was super exciting and enthusiastic and encouraging. So things we can do this year, just really quickly, we can start making some adjustments to this year's budget to true up what our expenses and revenues are. I will flag for you that we got our PILT payment notice, which is the money that comes from the federal government in lieu of public lands, in lieu of being able to pay property taxes on public lands, and it's about $200,000 less this year than it was the last year. And that's just a federal decision that gets made. Again, nothing anybody can really do about that. But it's a factor. And then looking at different revenue options, and then talking about this one-time transfer. Again, something, as we get into the fall, we should explore more if that's something you all really want to do. And that is, thankfully, the end of that conversation.